Sai, are you there? Can you hear me? Sai, are you there? Please respond. Sai?
Alright.
So, fine. As discussed in our previous class, we'll be starting with something called as object-oriented programming, which would be our first module of the training. Fine. So, before understanding what is object-oriented programming, let's try to understand what is procedure-oriented programming, which was primitive to your object-oriented programming, and we'll try to understand what are the drawbacks associated with your procedure-oriented programming and how they are overcome using your object-oriented programming. Making sense? Good. Prakriti, are you there? Can you hear me? Awesome. Okay, please respond. So, coming to your procedure oriented programming. So let's start with understanding what is procedure oriented programming and what were its drawbacks. So how many of you are aware of some language called as C? Good. Sai Krishna. Good. Sneha. Good. Fine. Good. So have you ever came across a concept called as data structures using C? So I'm not sure if you have that in your curriculum or not, but way back in 2000 we used to have it in our C and data structures as a language, as a subject in our first year of engineering. So if you remember, there used to be something called as linked list and single linked list, double linked list. All of these concepts, they used to be there along with C, and we used to construct something called as a linked list, which would hold more than one element together as a collection, right? So for creating that type of linked list, we used to create a very big code, at least near to 100 lines of code we used to create. Okay, so this is the first drawback of your procedure oriented programming. For implementing very small functionality also, you would have to write very lengthy code using your procedure oriented programming. Making sense? Good. What are the drawbacks of writing many number of lines of code for implementing a very minor or very small functionality? The first drawback would be readability. Fine, what is readability? If you can answer the question, say yes. If you can't answer, say no. Okay, but answer, don't sit idle. What is readability? Easy to read and easy to understand the code, right? If you have 1,000 lines of code for implementing very small functionality, it's not readable, right? Yes, sentence which makes sense. It doesn't make sense easily, right? You'll have to think a lot, right? That being said, why is it a drawback if the code is not readable? For example, think that Sai Krishna has implemented a functionality, and that is a very small functionality, but still it required almost 200 or 300 lines of code for him to implement the functionality. And that being said, he got some very good offer with some other company, so he is leaving the company. Fine. Tomorrow, Sneha came and she joined the team and she took the place of Sai Krishna and she started understanding the code. She should be understanding it very quickly in real time scenario, right? So you'll not be given a lot of time to understand the code and get into the work and take up tasks and all. So if the code is not readable, it will not be understandable for a new person who is joining the team, right? Or your code cannot be read by somebody and he can't understand it quickly. So that's the drawback of your readability. Fine. If the code is not readable, it's a drawback. Second thing is maintainability. What is maintainability? Say yes or no. If you don't know, say no. Not storing. So What is maintenance? Once you have purchased some product, okay, if you are trying to make changes to it based on your new requirements, or if there is something wrong which you have observed and you are trying to fix it, then that is called as maintenance, right? Same thing happens with your code. If you have purchased some code, or if you have written some code and developed a product, and tomorrow if some issue is found in it, and somebody is trying to fix the code, then that is called as maintainability, right? So when you are unable to understand the code, okay, usually in production, if you are trying to fix a bug, okay, that would be serious, right? So there would be very stringent deadlines for fixing a production issue, right? And if you are unable to understand the code quickly, maintenance is also an issue, right? Both of them, they are outcomes of writing large number of lines of code for implementing very small functionality. Making sense? Good. Third one is reusability. What is reusability? Think that think that three of you are given three different tasks, and Sai Krishna is asked to write some code which is used for printing the documents, and it supports all type of documents available in the market, and it should be able to print any document which was created using any software like Word document or Adobe or Excel or whatever, or picture viewer or whatever. And Prakriti is asked to design a code for displaying Adobe documents. So it's merely a Adobe viewer, and Sneha is asked to create a viewer using C#, and it should be able to display the Word documents. Fine. So everything is fine till this point, and tomorrow some new requirement came up, and Prakriti and Sneha are asked to add a feature for printing the documents which they were able to display using the viewers, right? For implementing this functionality, as Sai Krishna has already designed the code, they need not rewrite the code, right? They should be able to use it. Yes or no? This is one of the most desirable features of any code written in any language. Fine. So that being said, here procedure oriented programming, which is the conventional model of development of code, it has very less support for reusability. Making sense? Good. That being said, why is that? It doesn't support that kind of feature. It's completely dependent on procedures, okay, which can't be reused. It has very less functionality which supports reusability through the code. Okay, it's designed like that. Okay, so that's the drawback of it. So there are three different drawbacks, three major drawbacks associated with your procedure oriented programming, which are readability, maintainability, and reusability. It lacks three of them. So after identifying these drawbacks with the conventional procedure oriented programming, your computer scientists, they came up with a new pattern of development or new model of development called as object oriented programming. And this object oriented programming overcomes all the drawbacks associated with your procedure oriented programming. Got it? Did you understand what is procedure oriented programming, what are drawbacks associated with it, and why are we using object oriented programming to overcome the drawbacks of your procedure oriented programming? That being said, let's try to understand what is object oriented programming. Let me read through the slide, and after that I can explain you in simpler terms what this slide means. The programming in which data is logically represented in form of a class and physically represented in form of an object is called as object oriented programming. So simply, your object oriented programming is dependent on two different concepts. What are they? Object and class. Fine. Let's try to understand what is object and what is class, and through that we'll try to understand how your object-oriented programming is dependent on the two different entities called as class and object. Making sense? Good. So, what is a class? A class is a logical representation of data, and in object-oriented programming languages, it is must to create a class for representing the data, and class contains variables for storing and functions to specify various operations that can be performed, etc., etc., etc. Let me explain the definition of a class in simpler terms. What is a class? A class is a template using which you can create real-time objects. A class is a template or a blueprint using which you can create individual objects. Fine. Let me explain it, or let me elaborate it with a simple example. How many of you celebrated Ganesh Chaturthi recently? Good. Most of you, I assume, at least know what is Ganesh Chaturthi, right? Good. So I'm not sure how many of you experienced this, but in my childhood, we used to have potters in small towns and villages who will create Ganesh idols for you during the festival day. What you will do, you'll go to them and they'll have clay, pile of clay behind them, and they'll use something called as a mold. They'll fit in the clay inside that mold, and if they remove the mold, you'll have a idol before you which you can use for your prayers. Did you ever see this? Yes or no? If this is not making sense, I can give you some other example. Please respond. Good. So here what's happening, you are using a mold to create individual Ganesh idol, right? And let's try to derive a few statements from the example which we took. Right? You can use one mold to create any number of idols. Yes or no? Good. A mold is a template which is used for creating the idols, but it's not the individual idol itself. Right? If you go to Potter and ask him to give you a Ganesh idol, he'll not give you the mold, right? But he will use the mold to create a individual idol, and he'll give the idol to you, right? Let's repeat the statements again. You can use a mold to create any number of individual idols, and the mold is a template which is used for creating idols, but it is not the idol itself. Fine. Let's try to use these statements, and we'll try to correlate these statements with something called as a class. So similar to this, a class is a template which is used for creating individual objects, and the class is not the object itself. Making sense? And one class can be used to create any number of objects. Yes or no? Did you get the idea of what is a class now? Good. So hope you are able to see a notepad file. Are you able to see a notepad file? Good. So what is a class? A class is a blueprint from which individual objects can be created, and a class is a keyword. Are you able to see that or not? Prakriti, are you able to see the notepad file? Good, good. So let me make few more statements associated with your object, and using which we'll try to get more sense of what is a object and what is a class. Fine. So a class defines a type of the object, but it is not the object itself. So here, when we took the example of the Ganesh idol, okay, we understood that the mold is a type of is of type Ganesh, and it's not the idol itself, right? So you can have any types of molds, right? You can have a Ganesh mold, you can have a Hanuman mold, you can have Jesus mold, whatever mold you want, you can have a mold of that type. And using that mold, you can create any number of objects, but the mold defines what type of object can be created using it, but the mold is not the object itself, right? And here you should underline the term called as type. Fine. Why should we underline the word called as type? There are very few things in your .NET which can be called as types, and class is one among them. And for now, until we discuss the remaining types, you can use type and class interchangeably. Fine. When I am referring to something as a type, then I am referring to a class. Till the time we discuss few other things which can be called as types. Making sense? Good. And the object is a concrete entity based on a class, and it's sometimes referred to as a instance of a class. Fine. So what is object? Object is referred to as a concrete entity based on the class. So if somebody asks you, think that I have created 3 molds and I am the potter, and I have given each one of you one mold, sorry, one idol. Okay, I have a mold and I have created 3 idols and given each one of you one mold, one idol. Okay, so if somebody comes up to you and if they ask you what is this, you will tell that this is a idol of Ganesh type, right? So what is good? So what is Ganesh here? Ganesh is a type, right? And the idol you have in your hand is the real-time instance of the type. Similar to it, here class defines a type of the object, and here object refers to real-time instance of a class, right? And from now onwards, if we are referring to something as an instance, then we are definitely referring to object. And the terms object and instance can be used interchangeably, and the terms class and type can be used interchangeably. Making sense? Good, 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 good. Let's move on to R. And if you see here, here is a very small example of your, where is this? I'm looking for the pen actually. Fine, no problem. I think you are able to see my uh, this thing pointer on the screen. Are you able to see that? Good. So here the term class is a keyword which is used to create a class. Fine. Here in this example of a class called as circle, we are creating a type called as circle using the keyword called as class. Got it? Let's not get into details of what is contained in this class, but we'll understand what the class contains in our next slides. Fine. So our next term which should be understood is a member. What is a member? Anything which is defined inside your class can be called as a member. Fine. Anything which is created or which is defined inside your class can be called as a member. Fine. Think that you are creating a class of type car. Okay. And not object. Object is an instance of class. Okay. But member is something which defines which is defined inside your class and which will explain something associated with your class. For example, think that you have created 3 individual Ganesh idols, extending our example there. Okay, and the Ganesh idol which I have created for Sai Krishna is of white color, and Ganesh idol which I have created for Sneha is of red color. Okay, then there should be some attribute associated with your class called as Ganesha which explains the color of your object, right? That would be defined inside your class's definition, and that is called as a member. Making sense? Good. So anything which is defined inside your class can be called as a member. Okay, and there can be two types of members actually. Okay, one is called as a field. Fine, a field is used to save something into your memory. Fine. So for example, you have created a car class. Okay, you have created a car class, and there are many properties or attributes associated with it, like the color of the car, number of wheels, and engine cc, everything. Many things would be there, right? Ignition type. So there are many features associated with your class, and everything, when you are representing this, okay, they would be saved inside your memory, right? So you can, you will create a new instance of a car, and I have created 3 instances of a car and given each one to one of my students, and each one of the objects have some properties associated with that, like what ignition type it has, and what type of transmission system it has, and what color it has. So these properties would be explained using something called as field. Fine? Understood? Good. There is a second type of member which can be defined inside your class. There is a second type of member which can be defined inside your class. What is that? That is called as a function or a method. Fine? What is function or a method? Let me give a simple definition for a function or a method. Okay, and I would expect you to remember the definition of the function at least for next 5 or 6 classes. Okay, because this will be repeated again and again when we are discussing our next topics. Okay, what is a function or a method? A function is a series of statements which are executed sequentially under a single name. What is that? A function is a set of statements or series of statements which are executed sequentially under a single name. Fine. For example, think that you have created a function called as add numbers, and this function contains 2 statements inside it. First one is add all the numbers which are passed as input to it, and second one is return the value. Fine, or display the value. So these 2 different statements which are defined inside your function are executed sequentially under the single name called as add numbers. Making sense? Good. So what is a method or a function? A method or a function is a series of statements which are executed sequentially under a single name. Fine. Let's extend the definition a bit again. So the method may accept few parameters and it may return a value. Fine. So when you are adding a number, adding few numbers and returning the sum of them using the function called as add numbers, it should accept the numbers first as input, right? And it should add them, perform some operations on the input and generate the output and return it, right? Yes or no? Good. So let's put everything together and try to understand what is a method again. A method is a series of statements which are executed sequentially under a single name, and a method may accept few parameters and it may return a value. Fine. So the inputs which are passed to your method are called as parameters, and the value it would be returning is called as return value, and it would have a type associated with it which would be given in the definition. If you see now, there are 2 things which are defined inside your circle. First one is your radius. Fine. So here double represents the data type of your radius. Fine. Making sense? And we have something called as area defined inside it, and this is a function. Okay, and what is this function executing? This function is executing the statement called as return 3.14, which is pi into r square, right? So it is calculating the area. Fine. And is it accepting any parameters? No. If it had been accepting any parameters, they would have been defined inside the open and closed parenthesis next to your area, right? And here, what is area? Area is the name of the function. And what is double? Double is the return type of your function. What type of value it would be returning, right? Good. So what is a function? A function is a series of statements which are executed sequentially under a single name, and it may accept few parameters and it may return a value. Fine. Good. So that being said, now let's extend the definition of a function and we'll try to understand few terms associated with your function. Fine. The series of statements which are executed by your function are called as implementation of your function. What is that? Implementation of your function. The series of statements which are executed by your function, like return pi r square, return pi r square, which we have seen earlier, is the statement which would be executed by the function. So like that, all the statements which are executed by your function are together called as implementation of the function. Fine. And the name of your function along with type of parameters accepted by it and return type of your function put together would be called as signature or definition of your function. Fine. What is signature of your function? The name of your function along with the parameters accepted by it and return type of it would be together called as return type of your signature of your function. Fine. There are two terms associated with your function. The statements which are executed by your function are put together called as implementation of your function, and the name of your function along with parameters being accepted by it and the return type are called as the signature or definition of your function. Fine. Good. Now that is about members of your class. Okay. And how to create an object of your class. Okay. You will use a statement called as circle C and C equal to new circle. So here we have written it in two different lines, but usually what you would do, circle C equal to new circle. Fine. That is the statement which would be used for creating a object of circle type. Fine. And here circle is the name of your class or type of the object, and C is the object itself. Making sense? So what is circle? Circle is the name of your class or type of your object, and C is the object itself. Did you understand how to create a object using your class definition? Awesome. Good. 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 This we have already understood. Now, our next topic is about understanding the features of your object-oriented programming. By now, you should have understood what is object-oriented programming and what is procedure-oriented programming and what are drawbacks associated with your procedure-oriented programming and how they are overcome using your object-oriented programming. Okay, we have not seen the how part. Okay, you'll get the sense of it once you start coding using your object-oriented programming language. And for example, and just for your knowledge, there are multiple languages which are based on object-oriented programming, and most of them are not 100% object-oriented programming languages. Okay, and usually if somebody asks you an example of the best language which uses object-oriented programming to the most extent, then you should say that, and this is not my answer, but most of the people, they say that Ruby on Rails is the language which implements object-oriented programming to the highest extent. Fine. And are there any other examples of object-oriented programming supported languages? .NET. That's the reason why we are learning .NET, right? And any other language? Say yes or no. Anything is fine. If you know, if you can answer, say yes. If you can't answer, say no. No. Java. Good. Java is object-oriented programming language. Okay. Good. That being said, there are multiple features associated with your object-oriented programming, and for that matter, there are 4 different properties associated with your object-oriented programming, which are called as pillars of your object-oriented programming, and the object-oriented programming concept in total is dependent on 4 important properties associated with it. Fine. What are the 4 different properties associated with your object-oriented programming? First one is called as inheritance. Second one is called as abstraction. Third one is called as encapsulation, and fourth one is called as polymorphism. Okay, fine. Making sense? Good. First one is called as inheritance. Second one is called as abstraction. Third one is called as encapsulation, and fourth one is called as polymorphism. Okay, these 4 principles, they are put together called as your fundamentals or pillars of your object oriented programming concept. Fine. Good. Let's discuss them in our tomorrow's class. Okay, for today, did you understand everything which has been discussed today? Did it make sense? Any questions? Any questions? If you have any questions, you can let me know. If you don't have any questions, say no. Good. So usually your class will be at the same time every day, which is 7 p.m. Eastern time or 6 p.m. Central time, and it would be for 1.5 hours usually. Okay, 7 to 8:30. I don't think anyone has an issue with it. Are we fine with 7 to 8:30 timing? What does no refer to, Sai Krishna? Yes. Okay, so you have any issue or you don't have any issue? Don't have problem. What about you, Prakriti? Is it fine? Sneha is good, but on Wednesday you have a class. At what time do you have a class on Wednesday? At what time do you have a class on Wednesday, Prakriti? Till what time? 5:30 to 6:30. So which time zone are you located in? 5:30 to 8:30 Eastern time? Good. Then let me do it this way. Uh, oh, you are also in the same class. Good. So both of you can't join on Wednesday at that time. That's what you say. Sai Krishna, can you join or you can't join at that time on Wednesday? Can't join. Good. Sneha has a class from 6:30 to 8 on Friday. Okay, then what we can do, okay, I'll continue with the class, and usually if the attendance is less, we'll do it like how we did today. We'll do it for less time, okay, maybe 1 hour or so, and every class would be recorded. Okay, and recording will be shared with you, and before next class you can go through the recording and you can come back to me with any questions you have. Making sense? Good. Okay, fine then. And today itself you'll be getting an email from some email ID called as Venkat. So So that would contain the invitation to access the Google Drive share. Okay, so every day one folder would be created and your recordings would be dropped in that. Okay, so you can save that email and you can access the Google Drive every day, and you can watch the videos if you have missed the class. Fine? Making sense? Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining, and we'll meet tomorrow at the same time. No problem. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Bye.